Have you ever wondered why so many people start their journey to success with fire in their hearts, only to fade quietly into mediocrity? They had the dream, the drive, even the potential. Yet something unseen, something silent, slowly strangled their progress. These are the 7 silent killers of success. And unless we recognize and eliminate them, they'll claim ours too. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Earl Nightingale. Today, I want to talk to you about something that doesn't make headlines, but determines destinies. They are not loud enemies. They don't arrive with warnings or alarms. No, they live quietly within us, waiting for moments of weakness. They are the 7 silent killers of success. The first is complacency. It's that quiet voice that whispers, "You're doing well enough." It convinces us to stop striving to settle where we stand. The moment you accept comfort over growth, you begin to decline. Success requires motion, continuous, deliberate motion. The great tragedy of life isn't failure, it's standing still. Then comes fear of criticism. Most people never reach their potential because they're afraid of what others will think. But remember this, the crowd only jeers from the stands. They never play on the field. The person who fears judgment will forever be ruled by it. The day you stop needing everyone's approval is the day you begin to lead your own life. The third killer is procrastination. Tomorrow, we say, tomorrow will begin. But tomorrow is the cemetery of unfulfilled dreams. Great men and women act while others delay. The clock is ticking whether you move or not. The secret is simple. Start. Imperfectly, perhaps, but start. The fourth is negative association. Our environment shapes our destiny. Spend time with dreamers, you'll dream. Spend time with doubters, you'll doubt. Guard your associations as you would your health. Choose to walk with those who lift you, not those who anchor you. Then there's lack of purpose. Without a clear aim, even hard work is wasted energy. A ship without a destination will drift endlessly, no matter how strong the wind. Ask yourself, what am I really working toward? Once you answer that question, life begins to unfold with clarity and power. The 6th silent killer is self-doubt. It poisons the mind and weakens resolve. Every successful person you admire once stood where you stand now. Uncertain, hesitant, unsure. But they chose belief over fear. They acted on faith before the evidence appeared. The 7th is excuse-making, perhaps the most seductive of all. Excuses sound reasonable. They let us sleep comfortably in our limitations. But every excuse we make today becomes a chain that binds us tomorrow. There's a vast difference between reasons and excuses. Reasons explain, excuses restrain. Complacency is perhaps the most subtle and dangerous of all enemies to human progress. It doesn't strike with noise or chaos, it whispers in the tone of comfort, wrapping itself around our ambitions like a warm blanket. It says, "You've done enough," even when the horizon still calls. It convinces us that good is good enough, that safety is wiser than striving, and that the effort we gave yesterday should be enough to earn tomorrow. But life never stops moving, and neither can we. The moment we rest on our achievements, believing the mountain has been conquered, we begin to slide slowly down the other side without ever realizing it. You see, the human mind is like a muscle. It grows only when it is challenged, stretched, and demanded upon. When we stop challenging it, it begins to atrophy, not in body but in spirit. Complacency is that slow, invisible corrosion of potential. It doesn't destroy suddenly. It decays quietly. The most tragic thing is that it disguises itself as peace. It makes a man believe he's content when in truth, he's merely stagnant. There is a difference between peace and paralysis. True peace is born of purpose. Complacency is born of fear disguised as satisfaction. All around us, the world rewards comfort. It tells us to relax, to slow down, to take it easy. And while rest is necessary, confusion between rest and resignation is fatal to success. The great inventors, the artists, the builders of empires, none of them settled when they achieved something remarkable. They understood a simple truth: success isn't a place to rest, it's a platform from which to rise higher. The moment they reached one summit, they looked up and saw another. That restless drive, that hunger to grow, is what separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. Complacency begins when we believe that improvement is optional. It starts with small compromises, skipping the extra hour of learning, neglecting to think deeply about tomorrow, assuming we've mastered the basics. But mastery itself is a moving target. Every field evolves, every idea expands, and every person who stops learning begins falling behind. The world doesn't slow down for our comfort, it moves forward without us. The cure for complacency lies in awareness and gratitude. Not the kind of gratitude that stops you from striving, but the kind that fuels you to make the most of your blessings. To wake up each day and ask, what more can I give? How can I grow? What can I improve? The day we stop asking those questions, our success begins to rust. Progress isn't the result of force or struggle, it's the natural expression of curiosity and purpose. A man who remains curious will never become complacent, because he understands that every sunrise brings another chance to expand his mind and refine his craft. The moment we think we've arrived is the moment we begin to disappear. Fear of criticism is a silent chain that binds more dreams than failure ever could. It creeps into the mind softly, whispering that safety lies in conformity, that approval is the highest prize, and that to stand out is to invite ridicule. Most people are not stopped by their lack of ability, but by the imagined opinions of others. They fear the laughter, the raised eyebrow, the quiet judgment. Yet the truth is that no one who ever achieved greatness did so by seeking permission from the crowd. Every inventor, every thinker, every leader of consequence walked first through the valley of misunderstanding. We grow up wanting to please, to fit, to belong. And there is nothing wrong with belonging, until belonging requires that we shrink. The world is full of people waiting for someone else's approval before they move. But approval never built a bridge, never painted a masterpiece, never changed a single life. What built those things was conviction, the quiet certainty that one's own vision is worth more than the world's applause. The moment a man decides to follow his own path, he must be prepared to walk it alone for a while. That is not tragedy, that is the price of authenticity. Criticism, in truth, is a strange companion. It often tells us more about the critic than the creator. The one who mocks has stopped trying, the one who builds has no time to mock. Those who stand on the sidelines and sneer at effort are merely announcing that they never dared to begin. The great irony is that when we finally succeed, the very voices that doubted us will rewrite history and claim they believed in us all along. So why waste a moment fearing their judgment? The fear of criticism is really the fear of isolation, the fear of being wrong in the eyes of others. But progress has always belonged to those willing to be wrong for a while. Every new idea, every act of courage, began as a rebellion against what was accepted. To free yourself from this silent killer, you must learn to value truth over popularity, progress over praise. The world may not understand you at first, but it always catches up to the ones who persist. Remember that criticism is inevitable, stagnation is optional. You cannot please everyone, nor should you try. The surest way to avoid criticism is to say nothing, do nothing, be nothing, and that, my friends, is the surest path to obscurity. The courageous understand that the cost of expression is exposure. They know that to create is to risk being misunderstood. But they move forward anyway, because their inner voice speaks louder than the crowd's murmur. The man who listens only to himself, guided by purpose and principle, finds freedom in the very thing others fear most. Procrastination is the art of self-deception dressed as patience. It makes a man believe he's waiting for the right time, when in truth, he's simply avoiding the discomfort of beginning. It is a quiet thief that steals the best hours of our life, not with force, but with softness. It says, tomorrow, in a voice so reasonable, so convincing that we nod in agreement. But tomorrow is an illusion. It never arrives as we imagine it. Every sunrise is a today that was once a tomorrow, and yet most people keep waiting for one more perfect day before they begin. The danger of procrastination lies in its subtlety. It does not shout, it whispers. It does not command, it suggests. It tells us that we need a little more information, a little more confidence, a little more time. And so, while we prepare endlessly, life moves quietly past us. The world rewards those who act, not those who intend. Intentions, no matter how noble, cannot build a house or write a book or change a destiny. Only action can. The great divide between the successful and the unsuccessful is not talent or luck. It is movement. One group begins, the other delays. A man who procrastinates is like a farmer who keeps sharpening his tools but never plants a seed. He tells himself he's getting ready, but readiness without action is only disguised fear. Most procrastination isn't laziness at all. It's hesitation born of uncertainty. We wait because we want assurance of success before we act, forgetting that assurance only comes after action. You cannot steer a parked car. You cannot improve a plan that has never begun. Every great accomplishment began with imperfect steps. The greatest companies were launched in moments of doubt. The most enduring legacies were written by people who began before they felt fully prepared. The act of beginning is itself a kind of magic. It generates momentum, clarity, and energy. Once you take the first step, the path begins to reveal itself. That is why those who act seem to be lucky. They simply meet opportunity halfway because they were already in motion. Procrastination disguises itself as wisdom. It tells us we're being careful, that we're waiting for better timing. But the truth is, there is no better time. Conditions are never perfect. They never have been. The clock will not pause while we decide. Time, indifferent and unstoppable, moves forward regardless of our hesitation. The hours we waste in waiting become the regrets we carry later in life. The cure is simple, though not easy. Act immediately on the small things. Begin with one task, one motion, one forward step. The mind gains strength with each action taken. Soon the habit of delay is replaced by the habit of doing. Progress, no matter how small, breaks the spell of procrastination. The moment you act, fear begins to dissolve because fear cannot survive in motion. Action is the antidote to delay, the proof of courage, and the birthplace of all achievement. Negative association is one of the quietest destroyers of human potential, for it works not through our own thoughts alone, but through the influence of those we allow into our minds. A man becomes like the company he keeps, and yet few ever stop to question whether the people around them inspire growth or drain it. We pick up attitudes, beliefs, and habits as easily as dust collects on still furniture. If you spend enough time among those who mock ambition, you'll soon find your own dreams sound foolish to you. The tone of your environment shapes the melody of your thoughts, and those thoughts in turn shape your life. Every great thinker in history has warned of the power of association. A man cannot soar while keeping company with those who crawl. The energy of pessimism, criticism, and complaint is contagious. It seeps quietly into our confidence, weakening our spirit until we begin to mirror the very attitudes we once resisted. You can tell where a person is headed by the direction of those they walk beside. Spend your time with those who talk about problems, and problems will become your world. Spend it with those who talk about possibilities, and possibilities will fill your vision. Negative association rarely announces itself as harmful. It often comes disguised as friendship, as loyalty, as familiarity. We tell ourselves we must remain among certain people because we've known them long, or because they once meant something dear to us. Yet time spent with those who doubt your dreams is the slow death of belief. No man ever rose higher than the standards of the company he kept. The moment you surround yourself with mediocrity, excellence becomes uncomfortable. You cannot think positively in an environment that breeds negativity. The mind is fertile ground. It will grow whatever is planted in it, whether roses or weeds. And conversation is the seed. Listen long enough to people who speak of limitation, and you will begin to feel limited. Listen to those who discuss ideas, creation, and purpose, and you'll feel the pull of expansion. It is not arrogance to protect your mind, it is wisdom. You would not drink from a poisoned well simply because you were thirsty. Likewise, do not drink from the well of negativity simply because it is familiar. The world has enough people who tell us why things can't be done. What it needs are people who believe they can. That belief cannot survive long among cynics. Guard your environment as you would your most valuable possession, for it determines the climate in which your character grows. Choose to walk with those who remind you of who you can become, not those who keep you tied to who you were. When you align yourself with minds that challenge and uplift you, your potential expands beyond what you once believed possible. Lack of purpose is not simply the absence of a goal, it is the absence of direction, meaning, and vitality. A man without a purpose drifts through life like a ship without a compass, carried by every current, swayed by every wind, and surprised by every storm. He wakes each morning not with anticipation but with routine. He works not out of vision but out of obligation. And though he may be busy, his energy is scattered, his results diluted, his spirit weary. Purpose is what gives meaning to effort and endurance to struggle. Without it, even success feels hollow. The tragedy of modern life is not that people lack talent or opportunity, but that they lack a reason to use either. We are surrounded by comforts and conveniences, yet so many live with quiet dissatisfaction because they've never asked the most important question. Why am I doing this? The man who knows his purpose can endure any hardship, while the man who does not will crumble under the slightest inconvenience. Purpose transforms ordinary labor into sacred work. It gives direction to time, and time, when directed, becomes destiny. Every human being is born with potential, but purpose is the key that unlocks it. You could possess skill, intelligence, and resources, but without a reason to apply them, they remain dormant. Purpose is not something given to us. It is discovered in the act of pursuing what stirs our soul. It's not found in comfort or convenience, but in contribution. The moment we stop asking how we can serve, we begin to shrink. Great men and women are not driven by ambition alone, but by a mission larger than themselves. They do not chase wealth for its own sake. They use it as a tool to build, to teach, to improve, to uplift. Without purpose, work becomes a burden, time becomes an enemy, and life becomes a series of distractions. That is why so many live busy but unfulfilled lives. They mistake motion for meaning. They fill their days with activity, not realizing that activity without aim is exhaustion without progress. Purpose simplifies life. It tells us what matters and what does not. It allows us to say no to the trivial so we can say yes to the significant. It brings clarity where confusion once lived. To find purpose, one must look inward, not outward. The world cannot assign it to you. It can only be revealed through reflection and honest questioning. What can I give? What difference can my existence make? The answer to that question is not found overnight. It is uncovered slowly through experience, curiosity, and courage. When you begin to live by purpose, your actions align, your fears diminish, and your energy multiplies. Life takes on rhythm and meaning because every step now leads somewhere. The man who walks with purpose may still face storms, but he no longer drifts. Self-doubt is the invisible barrier between who we are and who we could become. It lives quietly in the corners of the mind, whispering questions when we should be making decisions. It tells us we're not ready, not talented enough, not deserving of the dreams we hold. It disguises itself as reason and caution, making us believe we're being wise when in truth we're being fearful. No external enemy can hold a man back as completely as the one that lives within his own thoughts. For the greatest prison in the world is not made of bars, but of beliefs. The irony of self-doubt is that it strikes hardest in those who are capable. The more potential a person has, the more the mind tests its own limits. The timid rarely doubt themselves because they never aim high enough to challenge fear. But the man who dreams of something greater meets resistance from within, the voice that questions, criticizes, and compares. It tells him that success is for others, that failure is inevitable, that he should wait until he feels ready. Yet readiness is a myth. Confidence doesn't precede action, it follows it. Most people wait to feel certain before they act, not realizing that certainty is born of experience. You gain belief in yourself by doing the very thing you fear. Self-doubt fades in motion and grows in stagnation. The longer you hesitate, the louder it becomes. That's why successful people are not necessarily the most gifted. They are simply the ones who act despite uncertainty. They have learned that courage is not the absence of doubt, but the decision to move through it. You see, the mind is a master imitator. It repeats whatever we feed it most often. If we feed it fear, it will echo fear. If we feed it confidence, it will echo strength. A man who continually tells himself he cannot ensures that he won't. But a man who decides to believe, even before the evidence appears, begins to see opportunities where others see obstacles. Self-doubt closes the eyes to possibility. Belief opens them. The law of the mind is simple. We become what we think about. The world has always rewarded the individual who dares to trust himself. Every great invention, every act of progress, began as an idea no one else believed in. If its creator had waited for approval, we would still be waiting for light, for flight, for sound, for progress. The cure for self-doubt is not arrogance or blind optimism. It is quiet faith in the value of one's own effort. You may not know how far your path will go, but you must begin walking it. For only in the walking does the strength appear. Self-doubt fades when purpose is clear and effort is constant. The man who trusts himself, even imperfectly, moves mountains the hesitant never touch. Excuse-making is the most polished form of self-sabotage. It sounds logical, even respectable, yet it robs us of progress with the gentlest touch. No one ever calls it failure. They call it reason, circumstance, bad luck, or timing. But behind every unrealized dream lies a pile of perfectly crafted excuses. They are the invisible walls that surround potential, the quiet rationalizations that keep a man comfortable while his opportunities pass by. Every time we make an excuse, we exchange a little bit of power for a little bit of comfort. We surrender control of our future in favor of avoiding responsibility today. An excuse is a story we tell ourselves to make peace with inaction. It allows us to stay the same while convincing ourselves we tried. It comes dressed as truth, but it's built on fear. Fear of failure, fear of effort, fear of what others may think if we fall short. The man who excuses himself from effort never realizes that the only thing worse than failure is never knowing what might have been. The world does not reward explanation, it rewards execution. Excuses are cheap, results are priceless. We've all heard people say, "I would have but..." Those words have buried more potential than any obstacle ever could. The man who believes his own excuses becomes their prisoner. He stops growing because he has built a perfect defense against improvement. Once we justify our limits, we guarantee them. And yet, the same energy used to defend a limitation could be used to destroy it. It takes just as much imagination to find a reason to act as it does to find a reason not to. The difference lies in attitude. No person who has achieved anything worthwhile did so without challenge. But they faced those challenges without leaning on excuses. They didn't wait for better weather, more time, or perfect circumstances. They started where they were with what they had, and they made it enough. The moment we decide that excuses no longer have a place in our vocabulary, life begins to respond differently. We start to see solutions instead of obstacles, lessons instead of losses, progress instead of paralysis. Excuses feel safe because they shield us from blame, but in doing so, they also shield us from growth. They make us victims of fate instead of authors of our destiny. When you remove excuses, you remove the barriers between you and your potential. Responsibility becomes liberation because it restores control to your own hands. The truth is simple: you can make excuses or you can make progress, but never both. Every excuse you eliminate becomes a step toward freedom. The individual who refuses to justify mediocrity begins to rise above it. Excuses may comfort the mind, but they poison the future, and a man who stops making them begins at last to make his life. Emotional reactivity is the unseen storm that wrecks the progress of countless lives. It's the habit of letting feelings take the wheel while reason sits quietly in the back seat. A man ruled by emotion becomes a slave to circumstance. When things go well, he is high and hopeful. When things go wrong, he collapses under the weight of frustration and anger. His mood decides his effort, and his effort decides his outcome. In this way, emotion becomes the silent architect of failure. The truth is, it is not the event that destroys a person, but their reaction to it. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions without realizing it. They wake up happy if the weather is good, angry if the traffic is bad, defeated if someone criticizes them. Their lives swing like a pendulum between joy and despair, depending entirely on what happens around them. Yet the most successful men and women in history learned to master their emotions rather than be mastered by them. They understood that emotional control is not suppression but direction. The ability to feel deeply without being derailed. Emotional reactivity is dangerous because it feels natural. Anger feels justified, fear feels protective, sadness feels honest. But feelings, like weather, are temporary. They change without asking permission. To live by emotion is to build one's house on sand, forever shifting and uncertain. The calm, composed mind, however, builds upon rock. It observes the waves but is not carried away by them. It responds, it does not react, it chooses its attitude deliberately, and in that choice lies strength. Think of the difference between reaction and response. Reaction is instinct, response is intelligence. A reaction comes from habit, a response from awareness. The reactive man says things he later regrets, makes decisions he later reverses, and burns bridges he may one day need to cross again. But the composed man pauses long enough to let thought catch up with feeling. That pause, brief as it may be, is the space in which wisdom lives. Those who master that moment master themselves. The greatest battles are not fought on fields of war, but within the mind. The man who can remain calm in chaos holds the advantage over 10 men ruled by anger. He is able to think when others panic, to act when others freeze, to decide when others doubt. The world will always present challenges, but our reaction determines whether they make us stronger or smaller. To rise above emotional reactivity, one must develop awareness. Step back and observe your feelings as they come and go. Ask, is this emotion serving me, or is it sabotaging me? Emotional maturity begins when you no longer believe every feeling deserves a reaction. The composed individual learns to convert energy into effort, passion into purpose, and emotion into motion. He becomes the calm within his own storm, and from that calm comes power, clarity, and progress. Inconsistency is the quiet undoing of ambition. It is the habit of starting strong and finishing weak, of burning bright for a moment and then fading into the ordinary. A man can have a dream, a plan, even the talent to make it real, but if he cannot persist with steadiness, his potential becomes a string of unfinished beginnings. Consistency is the hinge upon which all progress turns. Without it, effort is wasted. Momentum is lost and confidence erodes. It's not the intensity of effort that creates success, but the continuity of it. Small, disciplined actions repeated daily accomplish what bursts of enthusiasm never will. The inconsistent person lives in cycles. He feels inspired one week and distracted the next. He begins a book, a business, or a new habit with excitement, then abandons it when results don't arrive quickly enough. Inconsistency is seductive because it gives the illusion of effort. It makes a man feel as though he's working towards something when he's really just circling the same point. True success requires rhythm, not randomness. The world rewards those who can sustain focus when the novelty fades and the real work begins. Every master of any craft was once an ordinary beginner who simply refused to quit. They understood that greatness is not found in grand gestures but in quiet persistence. The writer who writes every day, even when uninspired, will finish the book. The salesman who calls one more client after a string of rejections will find opportunity. The athlete who trains when no one is watching will outperform those who only move when motivated. Inconsistency, however, waits for perfect conditions, and since those never come, it lives in perpetual pause. Inconsistency also destroys self-trust. Each time we make a promise to ourselves and fail to keep it, our confidence weakens. We begin to doubt our own word. The solution is not to make fewer promises, but to make smaller promises we can keep every day. Success is built on kept promises, layer upon layer, day upon day. Discipline, not desire, sustains achievement. Desire may ignite the flame, but discipline keeps it burning. Consistency transforms effort into excellence because it allows improvement to accumulate over time. It turns habits into character and character into destiny. The man who does a little, regularly and faithfully, accomplishes far more than the man who does much but rarely. In a world of distractions and noise, consistency is the ultimate advantage, for while others start and stop, the steady keep moving forward neglect of learning is the slow decline of the mind. A quiet surrender of curiosity, a gradual dimming of the light that once made discovery exciting. A man may reach a certain point in life and believe he knows enough, that experience alone will carry him forward. But the moment he stops learning, he begins to shrink. Knowledge, like a muscle, weakens when unused. The world keeps moving, evolving, changing its rules, and those who do not grow with it are left standing still, wondering why progress seems to have passed them by. The habit of learning is not about collecting facts, it's about expanding perception. It's about training the mind to think broadly, deeply, and independently. Every new idea challenges an old limitation. Every book, every observation, every conversation with a thoughtful person becomes a mirror that reflects some part of ourselves we have yet to see. Yet most people stop learning the day they leave school. They confuse education with preparation, as though life itself were not the greatest classroom of all. Neglect of learning breeds arrogance, the false belief that we already know enough to succeed. But wisdom belongs not to the one who knows, but to the one who continues to seek. The most intelligent people in history remained students all their lives. They understood that every discovery is but a doorway to another mystery, that every answer births a new question. The curious mind never stagnates because it is forever in motion. Learning keeps the spirit young. It keeps hope alive because it reminds us that tomorrow can always be better than today if we're willing to grow into it. The person who refuses to learn becomes trapped in the past, bound by outdated thinking, reacting to life with old solutions that no longer work. Meanwhile, the learner adapts, adjusts, and advances. The most valuable investment a person can make is in their own understanding. Books, mentors, experiences, these are the tools that build the architecture of success. To neglect them is to neglect the very foundation upon which progress stands. The man who dedicates a few minutes each day to deliberate learning becomes more capable, more confident, and more creative with each passing year. Continuous learning is not merely a practice. It is a way of living that transforms every experience into education and every day into an opportunity for renewal. Success, my friends, is not destroyed by great catastrophes or sudden misfortunes. It is eroded quietly, piece by piece, by the habits and thoughts we allow to linger unchecked. The 7 silent killers: complacency, fear of criticism, procrastination, negative association, lack of purpose, self-doubt, and excuse-making, along with the deeper poisons of emotional reactivity, inconsistency, and neglect of learning, all share one thing in common: they require our permission. They live only where we let them live. They grow only where discipline is absent and awareness is dim. Every person is born with the potential to achieve something remarkable. Yet most never will, not because the world is unfair, but because they never learn to guard their mind. The battlefield of success is internal. Victory belongs to the one who thinks deliberately, acts consistently, and refuses to yield to these invisible thieves of progress. Success isn't accidental, it's intentional. It begins with the decision to take full ownership of one's thoughts, emotions, time, and associations. The truth is, success is not reserved for the talented few. It is the natural reward of those who think clearly, work steadily, and learn endlessly. You need not wait for the world's approval or perfect conditions. The power to rise above mediocrity lies already within you. Each day is a new chance to rebuild your habits, to choose courage over fear, effort over excuse, purpose over drift. So from this moment on, take a quiet oath with yourself that you will no longer live as a passenger of chance, but as the captain of choice. Watch your thoughts, nurture your purpose, and commit to daily improvement. Replace reaction with reflection, delay with discipline, doubt with belief. For in the end, success is not a secret. It's a system of right thinking practiced persistently over time. And as you move forward, remember this truth: a man's future is written not by the circumstances around him, but by the convictions within him. Guard those convictions well, and the silent killers will find no home in your life. Your destiny, like your success, begins the very moment you decide it will.